If you struggle with pushing the golf ball, then this video is going to contain some information as to why you may suffer a little bit with that shot and some practical tips and drills that you can do next time you're at the driving range. The push shot can be described as a shot that flies to the right of target for the right-handed golfer, and typically it has little or no curve. It's usually just a straight shot that flies to the right of the target for a right-handed golfer, to the left of the target for a left-handed golfer. And that push shot is comprised of two main factors. Number one, a club face that typically points to the right of the target when you hit the ball, so an open club face at impact, and at the same time, a swing path or a swing direction that's going in the same direction as the face. So effectively the club face is open, pointing to the right, and the swing path is also moving in the same direction. Let me share with you some of the common reasons why people would push the ball. The most common one is incorrect ball position. So where you position and how you position the ball relative to your feet will change your swing path and ultimately affect the potential direction of your shot. Let me explain what I mean. If I take this mid-iron, I've got a 6-iron in my hand here, and I set up to the golf ball, the standard position for a 6-iron would be somewhere near the middle of my stance, maybe slightly forward of center. But if I was to, for whatever reason, have the ball positioned further back in my stance, that would mean that I would make contact with the ball just a little bit earlier in the swing, and striking the ball earlier than I want to will also result in the club traveling more to the right. Let me show you what I mean. So from this down the line angle, if I move this ball back in my stance more than I'd want it to be, I'd actually make contact with the ball too early, and you can see how the club would be traveling too much to the right. So if you're struggling with a push shot, the first thing I would check is your ball position, and specifically I would make sure it's not too far back. If you want to try something, the quickest fix that I would tend to see to fix the push shot would simply be to move the golf ball more to the front foot, slightly further forwards in your stance. That will result in you hitting the ball a little bit later in the swing, and that will have allowed the club head to travel more in a straight line towards the target. So first checkpoint there, make sure your ball position is in the right place. The next issue associated with pushing, as I mentioned, is also an open club face. Now, an open club face can come around for a number of different reasons, but let's take the most obvious or potentially the most easy to fix. Make sure you're setting up with the club face in a position where it isn't open in the first place. Make sure the club face is rotated to a point where it's more or less square to the target. But if you are still pushing the ball, then you're going to be subject to opening the club face during the swing. And that can happen for, once again, a host of different reasons. Poor grip, but most likely poor wrist angles. I want to show you how having the wrist angles in the correct place at impact will not only improve your ball striking, but your ability to hit the ball straighter by virtue of having the club face in the correct position. To help you understand how the club face position can change throughout the swing, I'm going to use the HackMotion wrist sensor and explain how impact and setup differ in order for you to understand where your push comes from. Let me explain what I mean. The way that we try to hit the ball, particularly with an iron, is to have more shaft lean. That's having the handle more forward when we hit the ball. But there's different ways to create that handle forward position. And lots of people get this wrong. They try to just push the handle forward by itself. And if I did that, if I just pushed the grip forwards, you'll notice how when I do that, the club face goes from being in a relatively square position to pointing to the right, open. That's the push that we're describing. So if I go from my regular setup position and I just push the handle forward, I can open this club face, and that's going to cause me lots of issues. What the best players understand is that as you push the handle forward, they also flex the lead wrist. The twisting of the wrist is enabling them to have the handle forward, club face open, with the flexing of the wrist to close the face again. This keeps the face closed to the shaft of the golf club, helps you hit the ball more solidly, more powerfully, and typically helps you to hit a draw shot. So having the handle forward at impact, yes, But doing so with the correct amount of wrist flexion is really the key to eliminating that push. So I've gone ahead and set up the HackMotion wrist sensor on my wrist, and I've enabled the audio feedback so that I can hear when the wrist is in the correct range at impact. You'll actually notice that when I take my setup here, my regular setup, there's no sound at all. And that's a good thing. That's because when I set up, typically this lead wrist of mine will have a small amount of extension. There's about 14 degrees of extension in that lead wrist. And if I was to just push my handle forward, as you'll see, there's still no noise because the club face is too open. I've still got that extension in this lead wrist. The trick that all the best players learn is to flex the lead wrist. That's a twisting or a turning of the lead wrist, in this case to square the club face. So let me do that, and you'll start to hear the feedback kick in. So now that wrist has moved to an almost flat condition, 0 degrees of flexion or extension. A flat left wristed impact that all the best players speak about. Most of the golf teaching books speak about that as well. Having a flat left wristed impact enables you to deliver better impact alignments and compress the ball correctly. And in our example that we're discussing in this video, helps you to deliver a squarer club face, which hits the ball straighter. So if I wanted to practice the feel here, I would use the biofeedback just to help me. I would move into an impact position where I've got that lead wrist flexed, or feels like it's flexed. Come back to setup, impact, setup, impact, and just go through this feeling of setup to impact and getting a sense of how my wrists are supposed to work. That will undoubtedly help you to close the club face more than you currently do, and that will help you reduce your push. Work on that feeling and impact of getting the wrist more flexed. You'll see there that that ball actually curved a little too much to the left, and on the feedback we can see that my wrist was actually a little bit too flexed at impact. But that's a good feeling for you if you struggle with a push. The feeling of being too flexed, the feedback from the HackMotion there of having my wrist in a slightly too flexed position really means I had the club face a little too closed, and that was why the ball went to the left. But as I say, that feel for you if you struggle with pushing would certainly be a good one to look for. And the final tip that you can take with you to the driving range next time you go out to avoid pushing the ball would be to take your head cover and place it on the ground just inside the golf ball, like so. You're creating an obstacle here that's actually in the way of the poor swing path. Remember I said earlier that if you're pushing to the right as a right-handed golfer, you're swinging to the right excessively. The club path is traveling in this direction. So we're going to put something soft, like a head cover, just on the ground inside the golf ball here, that's going to stop that travel of the golf club moving in that same fashion. You are going to need to change your swing path in order to avoid this head cover. So I can go ahead, I can hit balls with this exercise pretty quickly, just understanding that the travel of my club into the ball needs to be a bit straighter as opposed to being to the right. It might take you a few goes to get used to, but it's a really nice exercise to allow you to get a sense of how the swing should feel from a club path point of view, and you can just put the head cover down, you can leave it there for the entirety of your practice. Let's go ahead and hit one. So again, that's not going to push. That ball started straight, little bit of an overdraw, very, very slight shot to the left. Remember, if you're trying to remove a particular shot pattern from your game, you're trying to eliminate as much as possible the push. When you're training, seeing yourself hit a few pulls to the left like this would probably be quite encouraging. So take these ideas to the range next time you practice, and if you're interested in learning more about the wrists and you're looking for more drills to train your swing, make sure you check out the link in the description of this video for more videos.